Hi, everyone. Earlier today on Twitter, an NFT art collector based in Paris, who goes by the name of Artemort, used my likeness in a comic. He said he was following NFT.NYC discussions based on comics created by Doodles Use. And the comic says, it's not about the money. It's about supporting the artists, decentralization, and creating communities. I have to say, I'm completely guilty of the last one, although I tried my best to wear a pink suit so as not to, and I'll share the comic on my Twitter later, so as not to fall into the rigid archetype of an academic, which I also am. So my name is Dr. Nettra Pan. I also go by the Twitter name Art10Studio. And I've been in the NFT and blockchain space since 2017, tangentially, through my advising work for high-tech startups and social enterprises. I only fell down the rabbit hole in 2022 when I started collecting art. And now I'm trying to understand what's been happening over the last 10 years. So there are 3 takeaways that I'd like you to take from this talk. The first takeaway is that digital assets in the form of DeFi and NFT have attracted millions of users. According to 2 different estimates, there are at least 5 million wallets that have interacted with NFTs and 5 million wallets who have interacted with DeFi protocols. This means that there are probably 1 to 5 million users of these new technologies. NFT sales to date are 55 billion in total volume, And on DeFi protocols, we have 72 billion total value locked. Still, these are the latest figures, so it includes what happened in the last few weeks. Now, the question that I have for you is, how do we explain whether or not folks ape into projects? There's a study that just came out at the 4th International Blockchain Conference that shows that different NFT projects, and they have stunning graphics from the Hashmask project, CryptoPunks project, and the Bored Ape project that show that folks who collect NFTs really collect them and interact with each other the same way they would in a regular social network. So we think that communities could be a heuristic to explain why folks ape into different projects. Now, that makes sense for NFTs. We know that these are special digital assets that are particularly embedded in culture and social trends. What about other Web3 projects? What about other blockchain-based protocols? So here I'd like to share with you, I'll summarize in the next few minutes, the decades and decades of research on venture capital decision-making and investor decision-making. So, if you will, imagine in your minds a sailboat, a ship, if you will. This ship is going to be a metaphor for what Web2 sailing was like in the past. Past investors would look at this ship and say, does it have a leader? Does it have a crew? That's your first criteria, the team. The second criteria would be, how good is the boat? How good is the product, the tech? And do you have funds and resources to maintain that? So that's the second criteria, the offer, the product. The third criteria is the funds and resources to support that. Now, go back to the crew. Is this crew fit for the seas that they want to sail? Can they actually develop a great market entry strategy? Market entry strategy is then the fourth criteria. And what the investor would hope is that this crew is targeting a large, unconquered, and growing market. So picture the open blue seas in contrast to a bloody, competitive, crowded Red Sea, right? So what I found is that these criteria still hold true when folks try to understand whether or not they should ape into a new web3 project, either as a collector, which these days is quite blurred with investor, or as a contributor. DAO.NYC is happening at the same time today, and the folks who participate in DAOs could be doing other things with their time. So as contributors, they're also investing their time and their effort. And they're still using these 5 criteria to some degree. Now, what community allows these contributors to do is to bypass it somehow as a heuristic. So in the last few minutes, I'll explain why this is sometimes true, but still not quite true. So let's start with the team. In the team, in Web3, you have a different situation than our Web2 sailing image that I asked you to imagine before. In Web3, as you know, teams are sometimes not doxed. We don't know their real identity. We don't know their past experience. We don't know their relationship to each other. We don't know if they'll stick with each other through thick and thin or rug you. As a result, in Web3, the team sometimes loses some significance. And actually not knowing who the team is can even increase the value of the assets they're associated with. One example is the Goblins NFT. The team recently doxed themselves, and the value of the asset fell. The other thing in Web3 is that there's a very strong decentralization ethos. And so teams actually want to divert attention from themselves and show how they're going to give decision-making power to the community. So in this way, community does act as a heuristic for the first criteria, team. For offer, the community becomes interesting as well, because we don't start with a product. We only start with a brand, aesthetics, and the narrative. Later, we have experiences, and later, as in the case of Bored Ape Yacht Club, we have other types of products that you might be familiar with. At Ape Fest, there are members of the community making coffee, making burgers. These are products that we know of, and they come much later. And so when we look at product, the most important thing is the engagement with the aesthetic and the brand. So the community can act as a heuristic for the desirability of the product as well. The third criteria, finances. The community can act as a heuristic for this as well by showing just how much volume and secondary sales can be created. The fourth criteria would be the market entry strategy. And here, we have the community as another heuristic, because we understand through the types of engagement with that brand, actually, what will be the market entry point for this project. And finally, the place where I believe that heuristics, the community cannot be a heuristic, is the last criteria, which is, are we targeting a large and growing market? At the moment, engagement is still limited to early adopters. But what we can be hopeful for is that this market will eventually grow, and we'll be eventually able to say that some Web3 projects have a closer link to a large and growing market than others. Thank you so much for your attention. Let's discuss Nettra on Twitter.